We're going to put our feet up on the porch and we're just going to sit here until we die.
Nope.
There is so much vitality and there are so many resources now to actually promote longevity in a
hmm
season where I've seen some numbers that say women will spend somewhere in the area of about a third of their lives in this postmenopausal space. So let's get excited about it.
Women's bodies and brains undergo large changes during puberty, childbirth, and menopause. Just like how sexuality hasn't been talked about much in previous generations, at least not in a positive light, menopause also hasn't been talked about very much yet. Just pretty much all women in their 40s and 50s and beyond experience this wonderful and natural change in their lifetime. This might be a bit funny coming from a dude to do an episode about menopause, but I'm really curious about this amazing natural process that women undergo. Part of my curiosity, I admit, is fueled by questions in our private Facebook group asking about it. I admit with a little bit of humor that most of the comments are from husbands desperate for answers, wondering where their wife's libido went after she experiences menopause symptoms. We'll address this question among many others in this episode. So I reached out to my friend and fellow marriage and sex coach, Alisa DiLorenzo. She and her husband, Tony, are the hosts of the incredible One Extraordinary Marriage podcast and the author of several books. Alisa is very knowledgeable about menopause and is here to answer many of your questions. A few times a year, we open the doors to our men's and women's small group coaching programs. These are limited to just 6 to 10 men or women, and we meet weekly for 12 weeks. It's intensive and designed for individuals that want to do a deep dive into intimacy and sexuality in their most important relationship, their marriage, with others, men and women, in their respective groups in a confidential and upbeat setting. The coaching that you get is invaluable. In fact, here's what one man emailed me yesterday who just recently graduated from our most recent cohort that just wrapped up last week. He says, I want to express just how transformative this experience has been for me. I've participated in countless programs over the years and various Christian-based resources, but nothing has come close to the impact of this course. After 22 years of marriage, I had grown increasingly hopeless that a solution existed. Most other programs left me feeling more discouraged, and some even made things worse. But I kept searching, believing God wanted something better for me in my marriage. This program has been nothing short of a miracle. The safe, faith-filled, and deeply practical environment you've created allowed me to finally see what I've been missing. The group setting provided camaraderie and accountability, and the curriculum addressed the real issues that had kept me stuck for so long. End of quote. Remember, the next cohort starts May 6 for both our men's and our women's versions. You can learn more about the programs on our website at getyourmarriageon.com, as well as in the show notes below. Alisa, welcome to the Get Your Marriage On podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic and I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
Good. I'm really looking forward to this conversation, and you're an expert in this specific domain. You teach other women about this and men, and this is going to be a great conversation about what we're going to talk about. But first, I want to know of a time you yourself experienced the first symptoms of perimenopause.
Oh my gosh. This is a little embarrassing on my side. So I was probably about 48 and I'm 50 now. So this is about a couple years ago. And Tony and I love to cuddle in bed. It's kind of one of the things we do. It's how we get our physical touch. And one night, unbeknownst to me, he tried to cuddle. And apparently I was in the middle of a night sweat, burning with fire. He gets close. I flail my arm down, smack him in the middle of the night. And I keep on sleeping. I have no idea that this has gone on. The next
Uh-huh.
morning, my incredibly understanding, wonderful husband just looks at me and he goes, I think this might be the start of perimenopause. He goes, because you are hitting me in the middle of the night. You are like a dragon. I have no idea how hot you are, but you are like breathing fire in the middle of the night.
Uh,
And that's when I knew that I was definitely in this transition and that I
uh-huh.
had to get educated because I couldn't keep walloping my husband
Right.
and getting away with
Wakes
it.
up with a black eye.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Oh my gosh. It's still like, it's so cringy to think that like completely unconscious, I'm flailing arms and hitting him upside the head.
Uh-huh. So what is perimenopause and what is menopause, and what do people mean by those two terms?
So menopause itself is a journey. and some people will refer to it as the menopause journey. There is a point in time when a woman has gone 12 consecutive months without having a period. When that has
Hmm.
happened, she is considered in menopause. It's like a moment. If you can think about like a timeline, it's like the
Uh-huh.
dot in the middle of the timeline. Everything leading up to that, starting somewhere between probably age 35 or 40, she is in
Uh-huh.
perimenopause. That's when she may start experiencing symptoms, and I'll share them in a minute. And then after that transition point, she will either say she's in menopause or use the phrase postmenopause. A lot of times those are used
Okay.
interchangeably. Menopause itself is an event as part of the menopausal journey. Those
Gotcha.
symptoms, though, so often, I mean, I told you about my night sweats. A lot of women think hot flashes, night sweats, weight gain, but I've seen upwards to 40 plus different symptoms that can
Uh-huh.
be indicative of the menopause journey. Things like increased anxiety, depression,
Hmm.
mood swings. There's a reason we're all in our 40s crying at the Hallmark commercials because she's playing the car commercial. Some women will have skin issues, itchiness, dry skin. And, there will be those times where, I mean, I've had women that I've talked to have a sensation on their skin that almost feels like a rubber band or electric shock, which is just the
Hmm.
nerves being very sensitive. Other women, insomnia becomes a very big thing, trouble going to sleep, trouble staying asleep. And then you throw in a few night sweats, the whole
Hmm.
nighttime routine. Another one that can really scare a lot of women, and I experience this myself, is brain fog or feeling
Hmm.
forgetful. Um,
Right.
it's something that you expect, like, after you have babies, it's kind of that whole mommy brain thing.
Uh-huh.
But when you don't have littles and you're in somewhere in your 40s-ish, and you start walking into your kitchen going, "I don't know. I don't know why am I here?"
Yeah.
And it can be
All right.
really scary.
Uh-huh.
A lot of women,
Uh-huh.
because we hear the stories about early onset Alzheimer's and just things like that, will get into this place of fear.
Right. Oh, maybe it's something this and that. Like
Exactly.
they catastrophize what's happening. I guess
100%.
that's easy to do. And is
100%.
that happening because our brains are sensitive to hormonal fluctuations in our body?
It is. There's so much going on. Like, if we think about, you know, for most people, the first big hormonal transition was at
Hmm.
puberty, right? That we
Uh-huh.
all go through puberty, huge hormonal transition, the first big one. And in that place, if you have raised teenagers, the brain short circuits in all different kinds of ways. I've
Yes.
raised a son
I
and a daughter. You see all that. For a lot of
Yep.
women, postpartum, there is another, because of all of the flood of different hormones. Postpartum can lead to a lot of the mood swings, the fatigue, the
Hmm.
brain fog, all of that. Well, for women, the menopause journey is that third time in their life that their brains are being
Gotcha.
flooded with hormones. And our brains are like, okay, so we've got dropping estrogen and the progesterone's all over the place and testosterone's doing its thing too. And we're in this state of flux and not
Hmm.
realizing that our hormones don't just control, whether or not we have a period, but they also control all of our systems in our body.
Right, right, right. So there's a lot of symptoms and there's a lot of things that happen in our bodies. And you're not necessarily coming from this from the medical doctor standpoint, but are there any resources or things that you would tell our listeners, some of your favorite reference points, books, or things about this information?
Absolutely. And like you said, I am not a medical doctor. I am a woman in the menopause journey. I'm still in perimenopause. And I started going on a search myself. I'm like, who are the doctors that are talking about this? A couple of my favorites. There's a book by Dr. Mary Claire Haver called The New
Uh-huh.
Menopause. Um, she, this is where I started getting all of the insights into the wealth and breadth of symptoms, because she took the time to lay it all out there. We were just
Uh-huh.
talking about the brain, and Lisa Mosconi wrote a book called The Menopause Brain,
Uh-huh.
which I love because we need help understanding what's going on inside of us. And because so much is wired in the brain. And then another book is Menopause Confidential by Dr. Tara Ullman. These are three that I keep close to my desk for myself. Those are my own personal reference books, and ones that I often recommend to other women as well. Because I think 100% we need those doctors who are trained
Hmm.
in women's health, but not just women's health up to, obstetrics, having a baby, but what happens in the menopause transition. And I think, one of the things that I've sat at conferences and whatnot, um, that I've heard these doctors specifically say is that in medical school, most doctors are only getting a few hours on menopause.
Huh.
It's not this huge like, "Oh, we're gonna, spend days or weeks," or whatever it looks like in med school, and so you actually have to go find the specialists because not
Right.
every physician really understands or knows what's going on in terms.
That makes sense. Yeah, there's probably a lot of things like that too. In medical school, they'll cover the basics
Mhm.
and give you a little, it's really about breadth and not depth, and they expect you afterwards to go into depth in one certain area.
Absolutely.
And one certain area that you're an expert on is the impact of menopause in marriage.
Mhm.
Can we go there for a minute?
I would love to.
Great. Tell me more about the marriage relationship and menopause and what people need to be aware of. Now, preparing for this interview, I asked my Facebook group for what are their questions, and I sent those to you. And
Yes.
there's a lot of fear about, oh no, this is happening. What's going to happen to our marriage?
Mm.
Tell us, let's start there.
Well, I think a big part of the reason that there's so much fear is that we're of a generation where, by and large, our parents did not talk to us about big life transitions, right?
Right.
I've talked to so
Uh
many
huh.
women who the only instruction they got from their mothers in regard to menopause was, "Just you wait, just
Uh
you wait."
huh.
And she's like, "What am I waiting for?"
That's not comforting either.
No, and so it perpetuates this fear, or, there is this fear that our sex lives are gonna dry up, and we're just gonna be
Hmm.
like, "Well, that was, at some point in time in our 40s, that was the last time
Huh.
we had sex, and
We had a good run. That was it.
that was it." Um,
Uh-huh.
and the reality is that, and we were just talking about this in regard to the brain, with all those hormones that are in a huge state of flux, there are a lot of husbands who have said to me, "Alisa, where did she go? Where's my wife?"
Uh-huh.
Because it feels
Right.
like they're with a different woman because she's dealing with all this. And sometimes I chuckle and say, "Well, your hormones are also doing a whole bunch of stuff right now." So we can get into this place where everybody's hormones are in flux
Uh-huh.
and the marriage feels a little shaky. Like, what's going
Yeah.
on? Are we going to make it?
Uh-huh.
And there's actually, I'm sure you've heard the term gray divorce, the divorce phenomena of couples 20 plus years married.
Mhm.
I think in a lot of cases, that is probably the result of hormonal fluctuations that haven't been addressed.
Gotcha.
It just.
Or the hormonal fluctuations is exposing things in the marriage that haven't been addressed
Mhm.
over the 20, 30 years they've been married. And because they haven't addressed those things that were easy to hide or lower priority before, now they're front and center and the couple doesn't have the tools to deal with them, or they choose not to deal with them,
Well,
leading to things too.
absolutely, and that's why, I'm grateful for you doing an episode like this just to start to normalize this conversation, because I think a lot of the fear, a lot of the worry about aging and marriage is that if we don't talk about these things, if we don't acknowledge, it's gonna happen to all of us. We are
Right.
all getting older. Our bodies are all
Right.
going to have hormonal fluctuations. I don't use the word always
Right.
very often. I feel pretty confident using it here.
Yeah.
So if that's going to happen, we owe it to ourselves and our marriage to get educated, to have these
Mhm.
conversations and to say, "Hey, how are we as a couple going to handle this? How are we going to talk about it? How are we going to, not let the fear get the best of us and instead draw closer and be a couple that are on the other side are like the couples in those, jewelry commercials at Christmas that, they're in their 80s and they're just doddering around on their walkers together, right?
Right, right.
Be that couple.
So let's take a few scenarios and
Mhm.
let's walk through things that hopefully our listeners can help with. Let's take the first one where symptoms are happening. They both don't know what's really going on, other than that she just hates me all the time or whatever is going on, whatever it is. And it's perceived as a rejection.
Mhm.
What would you say to that couple?
I think one for her is what I would say to the wife is, you're aware of something shifting. You may not have the words for it, Because, the other thing too is that menopause isn't necessarily clinically diagnosed. There is research right now that's trying to, through blood tests and things like that. But for the most part, it's, what are your symptoms and how long has it been since your last period? That's why for
Uh-huh.
every woman that's ever gone into the doctor, when was your last period? Until you stop having them. And the other thing I want to say is that for some women, this can start as early as 35.
Uh-huh.
So you can be in
Yeah.
your 30s, you can start to see this happening. And I know that there are a lot of men who are terrified of bringing up a woman's hormones. They don't want to say, is this
Mhm.
PMS? Is this, and especially, I don't want to ask you if it's menopause because that makes you sound like you're old. Not to you,
Right,
but
right. Right.
so,
And it
go
because
ahead.
they don't want to be seen as insensitive
Correct.
to that. Right.
And, for a lot of men, it's also like having a few good questions in your toolbox, right? Honey,
Mhm.
you just don't seem quite yourself. I don't want to make any assumptions. How are you feeling? Right?
Mhm.
Like take her out for a cup of coffee if she wants coffee or tea or whatever, take her for a walk on the beach or whatever is something that has worked for the two. Hey, let's just spend half an hour. Let's go get an ice cream cone. An hour. Ice cream cone's gonna melt. It's a limited amount of time. Um,
Uh-huh.
how are you feeling? Because in a lot of instances, this menopause transition also happens at a time when a lot of other things are transitioning for her specifically, but also for the couple. Their children are getting older, and perhaps they are on the verge of sending them off into the world, becoming empty nesters. So you have this loss of identity there. You have
Right.
career transitions, which also
Mhm.
dramatically impact identity for both husband and wife. You have at that age point where you may be taking care of your parents,
Aging parents, right.
aging
Uh-huh.
parents. And so now the child has become the caregiver, the parent. And so you have all of these stresses. And then her body is doing this whole like tap dance thing
Uh-huh.
inside from head to toe. And she may feel overwhelmed, stressed, frazzled, doesn't know why her body is responding. And just, honey, we haven't spent some time recently. How are you? And just listen, guys, just listen. Don't try and fix it. Don't try and come up. Don't tell her she needs to, go exercise or eat differently or go meditate. Like, don't fix it.
Or or get her hormones checked. Right.
Probably not on the first conversation
Not at first. Yeah, exactly. Uh-huh.
because so much shifts and this goes for men or women, but when we feel like we're cared for in our marriage, when we
Mhm.
feel like we're valued, when we feel like our spouse actually wants to know, hey, what's going on with you? I don't want to
Right.
say you've been cranky. I don't want to say you're being mean to me all the time, but what's going on?
Right. I
Um,
want to know you. I want
mhm,
to know you. It's not, I want to resolve these inconvenient things about you. It's, I
mhm,
want to know you. That's intimate. That's a very intimate conversation
correct.
when you can really do that sincerely and authentically.
Yeah.
That's good. Oftentimes, a lot of what I see is couples have an agenda in
Mhm.
what they're trying to talk about to try to get the other person to see it their way or to change. This is a conversation without an agenda. This is, hey, what's going on with you? How do you feel? And
Mhm.
it's really because you love the other person. Like what you're saying, it's about caring.
It's about caring and it's about rediscovering the curiosity.
Yes.
A lot of time
Right.
in long-term relationships, long-term marriages, we make a lot of assumptions and we lose our curiosity.
Yeah. Right.
And this transition, I would almost say requires us to get curious again. What are you
Right.
experiencing? Like we did when we were dating or even in the early years of marriage. Hey, what works for you now? What do you like? What feels good? All of those types of questions and not just assuming, well, this is rejection and she hates me and all this kind of stuff. If she's somewhere between 35 and 50-ish, let's give her the benefit of the doubt and show up with sensitivity.
Uh huh.
And potentially, and I will say this, if you guys have had some issues, you may actually need a marriage coach to help you navigate
Yep.
this conversation with grace and love, but also pulling it away from the two of you just having the conversation.
Yeah, that would be helpful. And also address anything that hasn't been addressed yet in your marriage would be a great thing to do anytime before it turns into a big problem. I can't help but think about the attitude to adopt at
Mhm.
this phase of like, because in one sense, it could feel like a real loss of the old us. We used to be this way, like you and your husband. We used to love cuddling. Now it's a little iffy. Like there's a sense of grief and loss about that. We can also take an attitude of, hey, this is a new chapter for us. And what new vistas have we not discovered yet that we could have together? And that's a good attitude to have, perhaps, if you can
Well,
muster that through this.
and again, there is, for a lot of women, the grief, even if she doesn't want to have any more children,
Right.
right? Late 40s, early 50s, like, I am done having babies. There is still
Mhm.
this moment of, but now my body can't.
Yes.
And
If I wanted to, even if I wanted to, I can't.
I
Yeah.
can't. And so it's
Uh-huh.
this transition. And yet I see so many women who are embracing the after this second fate. Well, I mean, I guess for a lot of people, they consider it
It's the
like
second half of life
it's the
is
second
what it
half.
really is. Right.
And let's go into, we aren't our parents or our grandparents' generation where, you hit 50-ish and you're like, well, we're getting ready for retirement. We're going to put our feet up on the porch and we're just going to sit here until we die.
Nope.
There is so much vitality and there are so many resources now to actually promote longevity in a
Mhm.
season where I've seen some numbers that say women will spend somewhere in the area of about a third of their lives in this postmenopausal
Yeah.
space.
Yeah. Right.
So let's get excited about it.
Yeah, let's make it great. Let's thrive here.
Exactly.
So let's talk about that real quick. So tell me about stories of people who have found a way to thrive
Mm.
post menopause.
Got a beautiful story of a couple. They just celebrated their 40th anniversary and their birthdays are within just a few days of each other. And so they just turned 60. And here's a couple. She is definitely postmenopausal. And through those years, their sexual intimacy was all over the place. They would
Uh-huh.
even tell you just some actually really rocky years.
Uh-huh.
And postmenopausal, she was taking care of her mental health. She was taking care of her physical health, including her vaginal health. And they are so cute. For their birthdays, they did a 60-day sex challenge and went 60 days straight, culminating on their birthday or one of their birthdays.
Uh-huh.
And what I
Uh-huh.
love about that is here's a couple turning 60, married
Uh-huh.
40 years, still
Uh-huh.
choosing to, because they've taken care of themselves, choosing to make their sexual intimacy a priority when there are a lot of people that couldn't imagine a 60-day sex challenge in their like 30s, 20s or
Right.
30s. And here's a couple in their 60s doing it.
Wow.
I
Great.
love it. Other women that I've worked with who, in fact, I was just talking to a couple of them the other night, the rediscovery of their voice
Uh-huh.
in this season when their identity has changed, when they're no
Mm-hmm.
longer having to be responsible for the day-to-day mothering, right?
Right. Because they're past that phase in life.
Past that
Mm-hmm.
phase, they are developing confidence in who they are in this 50-something decade.
Mm-hmm.
And they're discovering that they don't have to defer, they don't have to make everybody else feel good. They can actually voice what they want. Little things from what do
Mm-hmm.
I want to have to dinner tonight to where do I want to go on vacation. And they're able to do it with a new confidence because it isn't all about taking care of everyone else.
Uh-huh.
So many women are now stepping into this place in their 50s of taking care of themselves.
Right. Right. That's good.
Mm.
And because they're taking better care of themselves, they can thrive also in this stage. That's great. Tell me about hormonal supplements and HRT and all those kinds of things.
Mhm. So, there's a lot being bantered around as far as hormone therapy. And I want to just reiterate the fact that I am not a doctor. So please go see your physician, see a
Mm-hmm.
specialist who actually specializes in hormone therapy. Don't just, doctors are us type of thing.
Uh-huh.
Uh,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
because again, based on the specialized training that a physician has had is going to really, impact how they're able to even speak to you about hormone therapy because you can walk into a doctor's office and get more off of reading a couple of these books and doing some internet searches than some doctors have had training because that's not their specialty.
Right.
Not that they're
Right.
trying to, give you less info. It's just not their specialty. And so, you know, different types of hormone therapy. Testosterone is one that a lot of people hear about in regards to libido. That is still not FDA approved for women in the United States. However, there are physicians out there who will off-label it for their female patients.
Mm-hmm.
That is often done in either injectables or pellets, sometimes also
Uh-huh.
creams, and they each have different pros and cons. There's also progesterone therapy, which
Uh-huh.
a lot of women will take to help with sleeping. And, so
Mm-hmm.
night sweats, sleeping, insomnia, that type of thing. And then there are the different, and that's usually like a capsule form. And then there is estrogen supplementation, and this can come in a lot of different varieties. Vaginal estrogen is super important for a woman's vaginal health. So, keeping
Mm-hmm.
the tissues healthy, keeping them pliable in the vaginal area, and then also helping with lubrication, because a lot of
Mm-hmm.
women in menopause, in that transition, will complain of vaginal dryness. Sex can actually become painful. So, even if you aren't
Mm-hmm.
using hormone supplementation, considering lubricants.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right. No one
so
wants painful sex. That does
no
not
one
sound
wants
good.
painful sex.
Uh-uh.
No woman wants to be on the receiving end, and no husband wants to be the cause,
No.
period. So considering, something like vaginal estrogen, you can use lubricants, you can also use vaginal, and I myself do use vaginal estrogen, partly because I was having another symptom, one I didn't tell you about, because there are so many, is that I started to experience the need for more frequent urination. It wasn't necessarily a UTI.
Uh-huh.
I just felt like I had to go. And so I started
Uh-huh.
doing a little research, and sure enough, this is another one of those little pesky symptoms.
Uh-huh.
And so I said, well, I'm just going to try it. Let's see if vaginal estrogen helps. And I've only been on it for, as of this recording, 3 or 4 weeks now, but I have definitely noticed
Oh, good.
I do not have to go all the time.
Uh-huh.
And so you start thinking through that. You're like, okay, does that help? And I also noticed just a different, like, there isn't any pain associated with sex. There is
That's
the
good.
natural lubrication. So and a lot of the research indicates that vaginal estrogen can be very healthy for women, even those, and again, I am not a physician, so please, please, please check with your doctor. But
Uh-huh.
even those that might have sensitivity to like an estrogen patch, or estrogen creams, a lot of times, because it is more localized in
Mm-hmm.
the vagina, it can be healthier. But again, speak to your physician.
Got it.
And when it comes to estrogen, there are different ways for estrogen as well. You can take estrogen pills, patches, creams, and there are pros and cons. Some of it has to do with cost. Some of it has to do with, if you're taking it orally, it has to be processed in your liver. So that's can be a lot of work on your liver. Patches are topical, and that type of thing. So it's just so important to have the conversations with your physician as a woman,
Yes.
to say, I know these options are there. Given my history, whether it is, genetic history that we have to worry about, or, postpartum or whatever, but given my history, help me to
Mm-hmm.
make an educated decision, and then
Yeah.
dialogue with your physician.
Yeah, that's really good. Now let's talk to anxious husbands who are afraid that, oh no, our sex life is going to be totally disrupted as a result. Let's talk to them a bit.
Okay.
What advice would you give them?
First of all, if you haven't hit this transition yet, start working on your sex life now. Like,
Yes.
don't wait. Make it a
Uh-huh.
priority. And this is everything from, learning what makes your wife feel good, if you
Uh-huh.
haven't already. Some great books around this are, I'm just looking at my library over here. Um, sh- uh, She Comes First is a
Uh-huh.
great one for
Uh-huh.
husbands. And a book that I would share with wives is the book Come As You Are, right? Which
Uh-huh.
just talks about a woman understanding her own body. And then as things start to change, this is where, being able to have those conversations about your sexual intimacy, do it outside of your bedroom, because
Uh-huh.
we need to be having the talks about sex where you want to have
Uh-huh.
sex. It does not go so well unless it's
All
like,
right.
yeah, that was great. But it's having small conversations. It's not thinking that the sexual intimacy around menopause conversation is going to be a single conversation. I will tell you that she is dealing with body image issues. So, husband,
Mm-hmm.
if you can build her up with your words, with your physical intimacy, the touches, the non-sexual touches, it will go a long way. She needs to know that you value her and cherish her no matter what her body is doing,
Right.
right?
That you're invested in her as a person, not the sex she provides for you. That
Correct.
no one likes to be treated that way.
And so be her cheerleader.
Yeah.
There are so many times that, if she loves little notes, if she's a flower girl and just loves, like, bring me a bouquet of flowers and just let me know that you were thinking about me. If she needs that time with you, so often what can happen is there is that sense of rejection. And so he'll retreat,
Yes, he'll invest less. He'll
invest less.
right. Right, or
And
withdraw. Uh-huh.
this is where a question like, "Hey, what are meaningful dates to you now? What are meaningful touches to you now?" You know, I love the word meaningful because it gets you away from, well, what do you like?
Yes. Right,
I don't like
meaningful
anything.
is good. Uh-huh.
But meaningful starts to speak to the heart. Honey, how can I touch you in a way that's meaningful right now?
Mhm.
And she might say, I just need you to wrap your arms around me and tell me that we're gonna make it through this. Okay, well,
Right.
if he's got an opportunity to touch her, that's a good thing. If he has an opportunity to comfort her, good thing. And that will lead to sex. It's just understanding that in this season, sexual intimacy is changing for both of you.
Yes. I had a friend tell me that she was starting going through menopause and her sexual desire went down. And for her, having a great sexual relationship with her husband was something she was always really proud of.
Mm,
And she was laying there with her husband, just grieving that it just isn't like how it was before. I don't have that kick in me
mhm,
anymore like I used to. And it's the beginning of the end for us, and things are
mm,
winding down. And she married a man that's a little older than her too. So
okay,
it's like that's also like a mix going through her mind.
mm,
Like statistics are in your favor. You're going to go first, and
yeah,
just all
oh,
of that's going on. And he reached over to her and said, "Look, we love each other. We'll figure this out. It's okay." And
yeah.
all of a sudden, she's like, "All right, I want to have sex right now." You're
Good. We
like,
are
good.
good. Well,
Take those clothes off right now. We're gonna get like it just meant so much to her that he was invested in her as a person, and it's not just about the sex. And that's the bigger picture I hope couples walk away from in their concerns and anxiousness about sex. Sometimes they're overly anxious. The anxiousness itself about it is just ruining things. Can you calm down a bit around that?
well, and don't borrow worries that haven't happened yet, right?
Yes,
Don't
right.
don't get stressed. Like, if you've been doing well,
Uh-huh.
there it might change, but it doesn't mean you can't still do well. It might be, a couple of different things can happen to a wife during this season. A lot of women, kind of the more stereotypical situation is that she will see a decrease in her libido, and
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of cases become more responsive, where she's going to need help becoming aroused so that the desire kicks in, like, touch me in the ways that work because I will get there. I just might not be thinking about it in the same way because she's got all of the tabs open, right?
Yes.
So that can happen where she's just going to need a little more help. On the other hand, there are women who, whether just naturally or through the use of hormone therapy, will see a spike in their libido and it
Mm-hmm.
becomes very high. And she's like, I remember when I was first on testosterone, I had like a 3-day window where, Dan, I remember looking at Tony and I'm like, is this what it feels like to be a 20-year-old guy? Cause like, I can't, look, I am thinking about it all the time. And he just looked at me and got a big grin. He's like,
Uh-huh.
this is awesome.
Uh-huh.
Weird, but awesome.
Uh-huh.
And then it was 3 days and that went away.
Uh-huh.
Um, but that can happen too, and it can be extended, and that can change the relational dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
When her when her libido spikes, if it's been, a place where generally he's been higher desire, it can feel like this pendulum has swung. And now we need to re-navigate. Who are we now? What does it
Right.
look like for us?
Right. That's good. All right. As we close this interview, please
Mhm.
tell our listeners where they can go, because I understand you teach courses on a lot of these things too. Where
Mhm.
can people go to learn more about you, what you do? And just for the listeners, so they understand, I also have a copy of your excellent book, Six Pillars of Intimacy.
Oh,
So make sure you mention that in what you say.
absolutely. The 6 pillars of intimacy is, and I'll start there. It's a framework to look at marriage from a very holistic standpoint. And as the two of you are walking through the menopause journey, it can become a shared vocabulary for how you're going to navigate, for how you're talking about, wow, it feels like we haven't gone on dates in a while. Let's address that. It feels like we haven't had a conversation in a while or emotional. Let's address that. And so that is the framework, that is the 6 pillars of intimacy, which you just mentioned. But more specifically around coming alongside wives who are just like, what do I do? Where are my
Hmm.
people? Who can I talk to about this? Um, I have offered to wives literally around the country, around the world, a program called Menopause Shouldn't Suck,
Uh-huh.
because I realized, here we are in this space where it's going to happen one way or another.
Yeah.
We're going through menopause. What if collectively we as wives, it's specifically for wives, stepped into this place where we said, you know what? I'm going to get educated on the physical aspects of what's going on. I'm going to understand what's happening with my emotions and why I'm all over the place. So it's not just like crazy train rolled into my house and
Uh-huh.
I can't hold,
Right.
and I really wanted to focus on the relational aspects, because
Hmm.
it's one thing to know that you need to, people are saying take your 10,000 steps and eat 100 grams of protein a day. It's a whole different beast
Hmm.
when we're married. And while all of the symptoms might be happening to her, there are actually two people in the house walking through
Right.
this together. And so I wanted to create a space, a community of wives who are just like, you know what, sisters in arms. We are facing
Hmm.
this together. We're going to get through it together. And we're
Uh-huh.
actually going to be bolder and stronger on the other side as wives, excited about the second half, not
Yes.
dreading it or rolling over and just waiting to die. So, and
Right.
that can be found at menopause.com.
Love it. Very good. Well, thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for letting me share, and for more importantly, thank you for giving voice
Yeah,
to a
it's
topic like
important.
this. Hmm.
We need to talk about it. Good.
Yeah, very much so. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Please share it, along with our apps Intimately Us and Just Between Us, with your married friends. I promise they will thank you for life. If you want a more meaningful, sexual, and intimate connection in your marriage, I invite you to check out my Get Your Marriage On program. Over 100 couples have said this program packs tremendous value and has helped their intimacy grow to the next level. Now, go get your marriage on.